Cemeteries. Places meant for silence, for mourning, for peace. But once the gates close and night falls, peace isn't always what lingers. For centuries, people have whispered about what they've seen among the headstones. Shadows, voices, figures that don't belong to the living. Tonight we're stepping into those whispers. These are chilling encounters inside graveyards, where the dead don't always rest. Welcome to Scripted Fear, where true horror lives. These aren't just legends, these are real stories, from real people who walked into cemeteries and came back with something they'll never forget. Have you ever seen the face of the dead staring back at you through a window? I have. And even now, years later, I still don't know what I saw that night. This is the story of the stormy evening I closed up Green Hollow Cemetery, and why I'll never forget the man who came back. My name is David, and for the past 10 years, I've worked as a cemetery operations manager in a small town in North Carolina. It's not the kind of job people dream about, but I take pride in it. I make sure grieving families can say goodbye in peace, that funerals run smoothly, and that every headstone is treated with respect. Earlier that week, a man named Miguel walked into my office. He was in his early 30s, with a thick accent and a quiet kind of warmth about him. He was there to purchase a plot for his father, an older man named Santiago, who was in hospice care. I could tell just by looking into Miguel's eyes how deeply he cared. He showed me pictures of his father on his phone. Santiago had the kind of face that stuck with you. Gentle eyes, a smile that looked like it had comforted people his whole life. He was far too young to be slipping away. Just a few days later, he was gone. The funeral took place on a Friday. The weather that day was biblical. Sheets of rain hammering the grounds, wind tearing through the trees. Some folks say rain on a funeral is a sign of good luck, but standing under that awning, watching the storm beat down on the procession, I didn't feel lucky. I felt uneasy. The hearse pulled up in front of the office, and behind it I spotted Miguel in his car. Through the glass, he gave me a small wave. I raised a hand back. It was a silent moment of recognition. Minutes later, we all moved on to the graveside. I followed the line of cars in one of the cemetery trucks, parked nearby, and stood under my umbrella as the family gathered. The rain never let up. Thunder rolled so loud it almost drowned out the prayers. I watched as the casket lowered into the ground, rain splashing against the polished wood. Miguel stood there, drenched, his shoulders shaking. I'll never forget that image. After the service, the family slowly left. My part of the job was only half over. I drove slow laps around the cemetery, checking to make sure everyone had gone, that the grounds were in order. We always closed the gates at 5:30 sharp. On a normal March evening, the sun would already be low, but with the storm, it was as dark as midnight. On my last lap before locking up, I caught something in my headlights, a figure. Someone was walking quickly down one of the narrow lanes of headstones. I slowed, honked my horn to get their attention, but before I could get close, they slipped behind a tall hedge and disappeared from sight. I cursed under my breath, grabbed my umbrella, and went after them. The rain hit me hard, soaking through my shirt almost instantly. I rounded the hedge and froze. Nothing. Just a long row of tombstones on one side, and the hedge wall on the other. No one in sight. I searched that section for 20 minutes, calling out, checking behind trees and monuments. Nothing. Finally, drenched and frustrated, I gave up and headed back to the office. Looking back now, I wish I'd left right then. Inside, I shook the water off and sat down at my desk. I pulled up the CCTV cameras, hoping maybe they had caught whoever I'd seen. But the storm made visibility terrible. Static washed across the screens. Trees bent in the wind. No clear movement, no figure. I tried to multitask, finishing paperwork while keeping one eye on the feeds. That's when I heard it. The visitation room door slamming shut. The sound was so loud it made me jump out of my chair. I bolted into the lobby. "Hello?" I shouted. Nothing. The room was empty. The hallways were empty. I even checked the front door, locked tight. Maybe the storm had rattled it closed. Maybe. But then I saw him. One of the lobby windows faces the front lawn, and standing on the other side of the glass was a man. He was soaked to the bone, rain dripping from his clothes, but his face was blank, expressionless. I squinted, trying to make sense of it, and then my stomach dropped. It was him, Santiago, the same man I'd seen in Miguel's photos. The same man I'd watched buried that afternoon. He stared directly at me, unblinking. I gasped, stumbling back, my heart pounding so hard I thought I'd pass out. Lightning split the sky, illuminating his face in perfect detail. And then, just like that, he was gone. I ran outside into the storm, scanning the lawn, the hedges, the driveway. Nothing, not a single soul. No wet footprints, no figure retreating into the darkness. Just rain and silence. I don't remember locking up that night. I don't even remember the drive home. All I know is that when I walked through my front door, my wife asked me why I was so quiet. I just muttered, "Long day at work." But inside I was shaking. I've seen grief. I've seen families broken. But never had I seen something like that. To this day, I try to tell myself I was overworked, that my mind was playing tricks on me. But the images burned into my brain. The blank eyes, the rain running down his face. I know what I saw that night. Some people believe the dead come back for one last look at their own funeral. Others say exhaustion can make us see things that aren't there. What do you believe? Because I can tell you this much. After that night, I'll never sit alone in that office after dark again. People always ask me why I go into cemeteries at night. I usually say it's curiosity, or because I don't scare easy. The truth is, I like testing myself, seeing how far I can push before fear takes over. But nothing prepared me for what happened in St. Adalbert's Cemetery. It's one of the largest graveyards in the state, so big that a highway actually cuts straight through it. Miles of headstones stretch out on both sides, dotted with trees and old mausoleums. During the day it's quiet, peaceful even. But at night, especially around 3 in the morning, that place changes. It becomes something else. A friend of mine, Marcus, had been daring me for weeks. He wanted proof that I wasn't all talk when it came to ghost stories. So one Friday night, I picked him up and we drove out there. Just us, a flashlight, and Marcus's phone camera. We parked by the north gate, the one with the iron archway that leans like it might collapse any second. The air was so still it felt like the world was holding its breath. No cars on the highway, no owls, no crickets, nothing. Just silence. As we stepped past the gates, the gravel crunched under our shoes. Every sound we made seemed too loud, like it didn't belong there. Marcus kept laughing under his breath, saying, "Man, this isn't even that bad. Where are the ghosts?" But I could already feel it. The weight of that place pressing in. We walked deeper, rows of headstones rising around us like broken teeth. The flashlight beam swung across names half worn away by time. Generations of the dead lying quietly at our feet. About 10 minutes in, we reached the old section. That's where the headstones tilt sideways, where the ground dips unevenly, where no fresh flowers ever seem to be left behind. That's when I heard it, a laugh. Not Marcus, not me, a child's laugh, faint but clear. High-pitched, playful, echoing through the dark. I stopped dead in my tracks. Marcus froze too. "Tell me you heard that," I whispered. He nodded, his face pale. We shined the light around, sweeping over graves, trees, the cracked pathway ahead. Nothing. The sound was gone. We stood there for what felt like forever, listening. Then we heard it again, closer. A little girl's laughter, right on the edge of the flashlight's reach. Marcus muttered, "Nope, nope, nope." But neither of us moved. It was like our legs refused to work. Finally, I forced myself forward. "Hello?" I called out, instantly regretting it. The sound of my voice was swallowed by the dark. No answer. Just the wind picking up slightly, leaves rustling. We kept walking, even though every instinct screamed at us to turn back. The deeper we went, the heavier the air felt. Like the whole cemetery was awake, watching. At one point, Marcus whispered, "I swear someone's following us." And then we heard it. Footsteps. Soft, deliberate, crunching on gravel behind us. We spun around. Flashlight beam cutting through the dark. Nothing. The path was empty. "Let's go," Marcus hissed. "I'm done. Let's just go." But when we turned back toward the exit, the light caught something. A shape, small, maybe 4 feet tall, standing between 2 crooked headstones. It looked like a little girl, but her face was wrong. Blurred somehow, like the shadows didn't want me to see it clearly. She tilted her head slowly, and I swear, even from that distance, I could feel her eyes on me. Marcus cursed under his breath, yanked my arm, and we bolted. We didn't stop to look back. We didn't talk. We just ran, stumbling over uneven ground, the flashlight beam bouncing wildly. When we finally reached the car, Marcus yanked the door open. Except his door was already unlocked and wide open. We hadn't left it that way. I know we hadn't. We jumped in, slammed the locks, and peeled out of there. Neither of us spoke the entire ride home. Later that night, Marcus texted me. He said he checked his phone video just to see if he'd caught anything. Most of it was shaky, just us running. But for a few seconds, the camera pointed backward, toward the cemetery. And in the distance, illuminated faintly by moonlight, was that same small figure, still standing there, still watching. I've never gone back to St. Adalbert's, and I never will. Some people say cemeteries are just empty ground, just stone and grass. But I know what I heard, I know what I saw, and I know, somewhere out there, a little girl is still laughing in the dark. Teenagers do dumb things. Everyone knows that. But some of the things we did, I wish we'd never even thought of. It was October, cold, cloudy, the kind of day where the sun never really comes out, just hides behind a sheet of gray. My friend Sean had an idea, one of his usual reckless ones. Let's check out Old Willow Cemetery. I'd passed the place before. It wasn't big, maybe 100 graves, tops. An iron fence boxed it in, black and rusting, with spikes that bent outward like claws. The headstones were ancient, most leaning, chipped, names carved so shallow the rain had nearly erased them. The whole plot sat boxed in by woods on two sides. A lonely road on the third and on the fourth. An abandoned house. Sean grinned at me like this was the best idea in the world. "It'll be creepy," he said. "Perfect for Halloween." I knew better. I told him it was stupid, but Sean had that way about him. The more you resisted, the more determined he became. By the time he pulled up his Honda to the side of the road, I was already giving in. We didn't walk through the front gate. That was too obvious. Instead, we parked a few hundred feet down, cut through the trees, and hopped the fence. It was only chest high, maybe 4 feet, and easy to get over. Inside, the silence hit me first. No birds, no wind, not even the faint buzz of traffic from the road. Just stillness. Sean was already moving ahead, weaving between headstones, crouching to read the faded engravings. "Look at this one," he called. 1851, can you imagine? But I wasn't focused on the graves. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching us. My eyes kept drifting toward the woods, then toward the building looming just beyond the fence. The house was 2 stories tall, stone and wood, windows smeared with dirt and fog. Its roof sagged inward, and one of the shutters flapped loose in the windless air. It looked like it should have collapsed years ago. And yet, I knew I saw movement. In the upstairs window behind the grime, I swear I saw a figure. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, but it was gone. I whispered to Sean, "Someone's in there." He just smirked. "Even better. Let's check it out." I told him no, repeated it. But he was already moving toward the fence line, toward the building. He found a gap in the iron, slipped through, and called for me to follow. That's when it happened. The scream. "Get out!" It tore through the cemetery like an explosion, louder than anything I'd ever heard in my life. It wasn't just a voice, it was a force. The sound hit me like a wave, rattled in my chest, made the ground vibrate beneath my shoes. I clutched my head. My knees buckled. The world tilted sideways, and everything went black. When I came to, I was on the ground, face pressed into wet grass. My ears were ringing. My vision swam. I felt hands under my arms, dragging me backward. My heart jumped into my throat. Someone had me, but it was Sean. His face hovered above mine, pale, frantic. "Get up!" he hissed. "We have to move now." I staggered to my feet, disoriented, every sound muffled like I was underwater. And then I heard it. Footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, crunching through the gravel paths of the cemetery. They were getting closer. Sean didn't wait. He yanked my arm and we ran. We bolted past tilted headstones, dodging broken slabs, lungs burning. I risked one glance back, and I saw him. A man. Older, maybe mid-50s, gray hair slicked against his skull. A long black raincoat clung to his frame, even though no rain had fallen. He didn't run. He didn't even hurry. He just stood there, staring, watching. The look in his eyes wasn't anger. It wasn't warning. It was hunger. Sean practically shoved me at the fence. I scrambled over, my palms slipping on the cold metal. He pushed me the rest of the way, then vaulted after me. We tore through the woods, branches whipping at our faces. The sound of those footsteps echoing in my ears even though I knew he hadn't left the cemetery. By the time we reached the car, I was gasping so hard I could barely speak. Sean jammed the keys into the ignition, tires squealing as we peeled off down the road. Only when the cemetery had disappeared into the distance did he finally tell me what he saw inside that house. The floorboards were painted with a symbol, black and crude, covering nearly the entire room. Later, he'd find out it was a satanic sigil. Around it were dolls, dozens of them, some propped in corners, some dangling from the ceiling on strings. Their eyes had all been replaced with black buttons, sewn in with thick, uneven thread. Sean said the air inside felt wrong, thick, heavy, like the walls themselves were watching. And just before he ran back out to get me, he heard movement upstairs. He swears he saw a shadow stretch across the ceiling, like someone was pacing the upper floor. We never spoke of it again after that night. But sometimes, late at night, I wake to the memory of that scream. It wasn't human, and I can't stop wondering, if I hadn't passed out, if Sean hadn't dragged me out, what would have happened when the footsteps reached me? Some places feel safe, until they don't. When my grandfather died, I started visiting his grave almost every week. It wasn't something anyone asked me to do. I just needed it. He'd been more than a grandfather. He was the anchor of our family. Losing him left me drifting. The cemetery where he was buried wasn't far. About a 15-minute walk from my house, tucked away behind cornfields and a row of crooked oak trees. It wasn't one of those polished marble-stone cemeteries you see in cities. This one was older, worn, the kind of place where moss eats at the lettering, and headstones lean like drunks after a long night. That November afternoon, the sky was heavy and low. Clouds pressed down, trapping the air, and the smell of damp soil and rotting leaves clung to everything. My footsteps on the gravel path were the only sounds. I found his headstone near the middle. A modest slab, pale granite, nothing more than his name, the dates of his life, and the words, beloved husband and grandfather. I crouched down, brushing wet leaves from the base. I don't remember exactly what I said. Maybe I was talking to myself, maybe to him. I just remember whispering about school, about my mom, about how weird the house felt without him. The kind of things you say to fill silence. And then, the silence changed. It wasn't just quiet anymore. It was watching. You know that feeling? When every instinct in your body says someone's behind you? I froze, my breath fogged in the cold air. Slowly I turned my head. That's when I saw him. At the far end of the cemetery, near the old oak tree, a man stood completely still. He wore a dark coat that brushed the tops of his boots and a wide-brimmed hat that cast his face in shadow. He wasn't near any grave. He wasn't holding flowers. He wasn't moving. He was facing me. For a long moment, we just stared at each other across the rows of stone. My mouth went dry. I thought about calling out, but my voice stuck. My hands were trembling, though I wasn't cold. And then I blinked, and he was gone. Not walking away, not turning, just gone. The space where he'd stood was empty. The tree stood alone, its bark glistening with damp. I tried to shake it off, told myself grief was playing tricks, that people see shadows when they want to. I left the flowers I'd brought, whispered a quick goodbye, and walked home. But that night, everything unraveled. It was close to midnight when the phone rang. Not my cell phone, the landline in the hall. I remember thinking it had to be a wrong number. Who calls a house line that late? I padded down the hallway, half asleep, and picked up the receiver. Hello? Static. A faint, grainy hiss, like wind rushing through a tunnel. I almost hung up, but then a voice broke through. Faint? Scratchy? It said my name. Not once, twice. The sound tore straight through me because the voice. It was my grandfather's. Grandpa? I whispered. The static deepened. No words this time, just a low, ragged breathing. And then, a click. The line went dead. I stood there in the dark hall, the dial tone buzzing in my ear, my heart hammering so hard I thought I'd pass out. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying that voice over and over until I thought I'd go insane. In the morning, I told myself it was a dream, that I'd imagined it, but the fear wouldn't leave. Because the next day, as I walked home from school, I saw him again. The man, standing across the street this time, coat buttoned to his throat, hat shadowing his face. Cars passed between us, headlights sweeping over the pavement, and when they cleared, he was gone. Since then, I've seen him in other places, at the edge of parking lots, across fields at dusk, reflected faintly in windows when I'm sure I'm alone inside. Always still, always watching, and every time I remember that phone call, my grandfather's voice crackling through the static, saying my name. But I don't think it was really him. I think it was the man, the one by the grave. And if that's true, then maybe he wasn't just watching that day. Maybe he was choosing.